Well, as we are in the month of November, we are in Thanksgiving, getting ready to head into Thanksgiving week. And as we were preparing for this night, we felt like it would just be good to bring stories, to bring testimonies of what the Lord is doing. And so just this morning, and many of you know this, if not, they're a gratitude, we'd call those, what would we call that? What are they called? I was going to say gratitude journal. That's not what it's called. Oh, it is what it's called. Wow. My bad. So there's a booklet full of stories and testimonies out there, and they're just beautiful to see the ways that the Lord is working in our midst. And so we thought we should do that this evening. And so tonight we're excited that we have three families and individuals that are going to share stories and testimonies with us of what the Lord has been doing, ways that they saw the Lord protect and save, the ways that there was healing, the ways the Lord is setting lives on fire, and so many great things. And so I'm going to invite Jenny, and I don't know how many, is it just you? Or are you going to bring the clan up? Okay, just you. Girls, you sit tight. And so Jenny here, Hesseltine, most all of us should know her. She worked with us for so long and is now working over at the Well. And she has really a powerful story, testimony for her family of the Lord just really watching over you. So I'm going to let you unpack it. And we also do have the pictures available as well. So go for it.
5 minutes is a tall order. 5 minutes. So you have permission to cut me off because Brad already said there's no way that you're going to stay to 5 minutes. And I know that that's true about myself too. So you have to cut me off. You can read the longer than 5 minute version of the story in the gratitude journal. So make yourself a big cup of coffee and you can read that. But yeah, the 5 minute version is that on August 31st, a random Tuesday afternoon, my youngest two, Sadie's here with me tonight. She's our 6-year-old. And then our youngest daughter, Lizzie, who is 4, we were just on our very normal drive home. I'd been at work all day and I had picked them up from daycare where they were after school, and we were headed on our usual route and went to cross through an intersection, and a dump truck didn't recognize the stoplight and hit us before they hit their brakes. And so we were T-boned on the driver's side of our vehicle. And if you want to pull up the picture of what our van looked like afterwards, it is pretty telling, I think, to see this. And I get emotional every time I see it too, because right where that tire is, where you can see how far the van is pushed in from where it was supposed to be, is where Sadie was sitting. And so I thankfully stayed conscious and was able to get through the middle of the vehicle to get to the girls right away. Lizzie was on the opposite side of the vehicle, and so the Lord's protection was all over her in really physical, tangible ways that she was not really hit very hard by the impact. But Sadie was right in that back corner, and when I got to her, she was unconscious and she was bleeding from her mouth, and I didn't know why that was. And it was one of the hardest things I could imagine seeing as a mom. Just like feel like you're living out your worst nightmare, because all you want to do as a mom is protect and nurture and love on your kids, right? And so that was incredibly difficult. She was unconscious for about 15 minutes, so it's a pretty long time. There were a lot of things immediately at play. The Lord just sent so many people. People that I'm still finding out now were actually at the scene of the accident or came up on the scene of the accident that just immediately dropped to their knees and began praying for our family. And so we felt that power of prayer all along. And in fact, one of the first things that crossed my mind later as I was able to kind of reflect and process was that we had woken up that morning and almost everybody had a little sniffle or a tickle in their throat or a tummy ache. It was just one of those mornings where like everybody felt kind of bleh. And it's the beginning of fall, and you know that transition of the seasons is coming. And So, and the biggest thing was that we had this big event at the well that was planned for the following Wednesday night. And I'd been on that planning team, and we'd been working really hard, and we'd been so excited to welcome so many people to that event. So I recognized that there was spiritual warfare at play within that. And we always pray on our way into school and work in the mornings. And that morning I said, girls, we're just praying the whole way in this morning. We need the Lord to protect us. We need him to bring healing. And so I remember driving through that exact same intersection from the opposite direction and praying for his protection over our family. But what got me later was that what I thought I was praying for was a cold, a typical average fall cold. And what I was really asking for, what he was going to provide in response, was actually protection over our lives and our bodies and our minds and our spirits in that moment. And so, yeah, gratitude has absolutely been our response. There is a lot that took place, of course, in the next 48 hours, but within 24 hours, Sadie was released from the hospital. And that is nothing short of a miracle, because after being unconscious for that long, standard protocol is life flight. So she got on a helicopter really soon after the accident and was taken to blank. And they didn't know exactly what was going on or how much she may have been affected by being unconscious, what her spine and her neck situation were like. There were just a ton of unknowns at that point in time. But another way that the Lord really showed up and provided a miracle was that Brad has a cousin. His mom's side of the family is super close, and he has a cousin who works at blank. And she is one of few who is trained on all the floors at blank so that she can respond wherever she's needed. Well, she had been working a full shift on the 3rd floor, which is not the trauma unit, and someone reported an hour early to work. You can't tell me that that's normal. People don't come to work an hour early for no real reason. So when this person got to the 3rd floor, they said, Brittany, you're trained in trauma, and they need another person in trauma right now. We need you to go to that floor. Well, within 20 minutes of her accepting that reassignment was when her pager started going off that there was a helicopter coming in. So she starts running to the trauma bay, and at the same time, her phone is just exploding in her pocket. And she's like, this can't be a coincidence. What's going on? So as she's running, she quick pulls out her phone to look, and it's all these text messages from her parents and her siblings saying, Sadie's on her way. You have to get to her. And, you know, we couldn't get there fast enough, right? Like I was still with Lizzie in the ER here in Pella. They wouldn't let us go because they didn't know the extent of our injuries either. And Brad was trying to get there as quickly as he could, but she was going to be in this really, really scary place all alone. And, but she wasn't alone because God sent Brittany to be there with her. And Sadie doesn't remember anything. She doesn't remember the helicopter ride. She doesn't remember Brittany being there. But Brittany says that her boss was amazing and said, don't worry about protocol. You take off your mask. You be her family. When she gets in here, you take care of her as if because she's your family. And as soon as Sadie could hear her voice and see her face, she just instantly calmed down. And it was just that presence of God right there in that room with her that gave us so much comfort to know, like we were thankfully able to know that she was going to be there and get to Sadie before we could. So that was huge. One more really telling miracle story. It's a little hard to see. I don't even remember which other pictures I sent, to be honest. Yes, thank you. Dave is like one step ahead of me. So this is really difficult to see on a big screen like this, but this is Sadie's car seat. So this is what her environment looked like. And so you can tell there's a lot of broken pieces of plastic, and the side curtain airbag did exactly what it was supposed to do, and it protected her. Well, what's difficult to see is that there's dried blood running down her armrest. And when Brad and our good friend Tim Denoy got to the scene of the accident, they were assessing Sadie, and she was still in her seat. She hadn't come to yet. The paramedics weren't quite there yet. And so they're just looking her over for bodily injuries, just to kind of do a quick assessment. And they saw a pretty significant gash on her left forearm. And both of them kind of just took mental note of it and knew that it would be the least of their worries. It wouldn't be top priority considering everything else that was going on. And so they just kind of made a mental note and did what they needed to do to help the paramedics. Well, later on that evening, Brad was with Sadie at Blank, and they got her settled into a room, and he looked at his cousin Brittany and said, hey, I never actually heard what they did to her arm. How many stitches did she need? Like, is her arm broken? What's going on there? And Brittany's reaction was kind of like, oh no, what did we miss? Because we were so focused on everything else. And she said, I have not heard them say a word about her arm. So they pulled back the sheets, and there's not even a bruise or a scratch on her arm anywhere. Right? Yes, thank you. So Brad called Tim because he was like, okay, maybe I don't know what I was seeing here. And Tim described what he had seen exactly the same way that Brad did. Like, they both knew that they had seen it with their own eyes. And then that earlier picture was evidence. The blood was running down the side of her armrest. But by the time she got to Blank, there was nothing even to treat. They didn't even need to put a Band-Aid on it. And I just can't help but wonder what else God was healing in the process. That was one opportunity for him to show us what he was up to, but I don't believe for a second that that's the only thing that he healed. I don't believe that my beautiful 6-year-old was unconscious for 15 minutes and can go to gymnastics and read like a 7th grader and like do all these amazing things that a kid her age should be doing without having any lasting effects. And so medically that doesn't make sense, but in the kingdom we know that it does, right? And so we're just super grateful, and grateful for so many of you joining us in the journey, and really excited for opportunities like this because he deserves all the glory for it. And so I want to tell the story. I want the story told because he deserves all the glory.
Amen. Praise Jesus. Oh, that's awesome. And so next, I'm going to invite Kathy Deal and Evelyn Munk up. And Kathy is going to talk with Evelyn. The Lord is doing some wonderful things in Evelyn's life. And so here we go.
Thanks, Mike. So Evelyn's going to share just briefly, and I'm just going to kind of interview style. So Evelyn, will you share with us a little bit about your stirring your hunger for God? Lately, you've had an increase of a hunger for God?
Yeah. So lately, there's just been like a lot of stuff going on in my life. Ever since quarantine, I was a lot younger then, and I hadn't really actually spent time in God's Word because I hadn't really had time to think about it. And after I started spending time in His Word, and then slowly I started to grow more of a hunger for God. And it started becoming more, thank you. It started becoming like more tangible in me, and it was starting to just come out, and I wasn't able to hold it in anymore.
I love that. Yeah, and you kind of shared with me just briefly about how you started to kind of trust Him and ask Him, and then kind of share what you shared with me about that, about how that started to create more hunger in you.
Yes. So I started learning more about God, and as I learned more about God, I started wanting more of Him, and that caused me to kind of reach out and start thinking about, well, what if I want to start helping in the church and volunteering? So eventually I talked to my mom, and she mentioned women's ministry. And then after that, I had been connected with Kathy Deal for a little bit. So I texted her. I was like, well, what can an 8th grader do at the church to help out? I want to be in women's ministry. And so she got me connected with some of her friends and people at the church. And it turned into this huge deal where I was able to meet tons of people at the church, and I was able to speak with them and tell them about what was going on in my life and what God was showing me. And during one of those, I was with Steph Hebrink, and she mentioned an email devotional. And it was kind of one of those things where it really like tugged at my heart. You know, one of those things where it just kind of sticks in your brain. That's kind of what it was for me. So I went home that day and I started thinking, because I'd always been really good at writing like almost like psalm-like things. God was able to write through me. I would seriously look down at the paper after I was done writing. I would have these moments and I'd be like, what happened? I had no idea what was written on that paper, because it was all from God and it didn't sound like me, and it had been so interesting. So that happened with that devotional. And I sent it out to just some of my mixed group friends and my close family members, and it started snowballing. So every day I would get a new message in my inbox, and it would be like, can I join your email devotional list? And soon, like after a few weeks, which is now, there was more than 30 people on my list. And it's just been so cool to see how God has worked through me and all the people that I sent that original email to, and just seeing how it spread, because I go to a public school, and how it's kind of introduced people to Christ just by people talking about this devotional. And it's just been so amazing. I'm so thankful for everything that he's done.
So you shared a little bit about some of the ways that God's gifted you. And, you know, one of the things you talked to me about was like, just feel like you have a message on your mouth, you know? Mm-hmm. And I don't know, you might have a few more people on your email list after this. Yeah. So maybe you want to leave your... But I will just say that, you know, Evelyn, you've blessed me. And there was a day that we met. And you had a message on your mouth. And you spoke about God's faithfulness. And we walked. And I just was having an internal conversation with God, like, I really needed to hear that. And your hunger for God. Your hunger for God it's been helping me. And your devotionals, when they see them in my inbox, I feel my heart rate go down. So God is using you. And I've been really blessed. I want you to pray for us all for an increase of a hunger for God.
Lord, I pray that you may just come into this room, and for all the people who need that hunger from you, that you may just fill them and show them the way that they need to go. Guide them in their journey, Lord. For the people that already have a hunger, make it flourish, Lord. Just be with them through their relationship with you as they learn more about you. I pray that this message inspired them and help them to act upon this hunger, Lord. Because as action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And we know that action can create testimonies. It makes miracles. We just pray that you shine your face towards all of these people in this room, Lord, that you may just show them the way. In Jesus' name, amen.
Wow, isn't God good? And let it be known, the Lord has been very faithful to our students, to our children, to our middle school, to our high school, in the public schools, in the home schools, in and out at Pella Christian, like the Lord is moving in very powerful ways, and it gets me really excited. So next, I'm going to invite Leah up, Leah Garland. Kayla, you going to come up here? You better come up too, Kayla. Yes. And they have a wonderful story of healing, so.
All right, so this is my daughter, Kayla. You want to say hi? Hi. And this girl has been just such a blessing. She came into our lives 13 years ago. And our story, she had multiple ear problems as she was growing up and had her ruptured ear, I think a couple of different times, which led her to need a hearing aid in her right ear about 6 years, or no, when she was 6 years old. And it was a month before our third daughter was born, so our lives were already very busy. And it was adorable on her, but a pain. So she already has many challenges and has to work extra hard. So another thing added in her life was hard. We had come to the sanctuary. There was a healing service. It was back in, it was 2 years ago, and we came. Now, we've come to healing services over the years. My husband has had some autoimmune things and kind of came that night with expectancy that maybe he was going to be healed. This was many times we have done this and not seen anything, and it's continually gotten worse. And that night, I can remember specifically where we were standing on the side of the sanctuary, and a prayer minister came up to us and went over to Kayla and touched her right ear. And we thought, okay, that's not what we came here for, but go for it, we'll see. And she felt warmth on that right ear and felt like there was healing happening. And so we moved on. Honestly, we're pretty skeptical of healing, not because we know it happens, but it just hasn't happened for my husband. So we came into it thinking, okay, her ear, we'll take this. And so kind of flippantly, we let her just not wear her hearing aid the next week. And after a few months of nobody saying anything about her not wearing her hearing aid, we mentioned it to them and they said, oh yeah, we've not even noticed a difference. So we thought, okay, no hearing aid is needed, but still our lives were busy and we weren't really paying attention to her hearing, thought about getting a hearing test every once in a while. And then just last month, somebody texted me, this random person from AEA, who said, do you want to test Kayla's hearing? I said, oh, kind of thinking back, I don't even remember when that healing service was, but yeah, let's get it tested again. And the paperwork came back. Now I've had in our little mud room just this hearing test from 2019, and the service was toward the end of 2019. And we got this in and just noticed such significant difference. There was, just in hearing, you think of other things. We had my other daughter, our middle daughter, who had epilepsy, with childhood epilepsy, and after a few years of medicine, was able to outgrow that. But science could kind of explain why that happened. Hearing doesn't just miraculously heal. So we looked at that, and it went up, if hearing tests mean anything to you, it went up like 50 decibels, which is huge. And as we started looking at that and listening to her singing in church, now we can all hear her singing when we're here. It used to be that she was so off tune, and though we loved her joy, and that was okay. But this girl is singing in tune. Not all the time, and I don't either, so it's all good. We're all in the same company, but just getting to hear her is just, and knowing so many times now she's in tune, and most people with Down syndrome will never sing in tune. It's kind of a rarity that she's singing in tune, and so we still haven't gotten our healing. We've had many times of praying for healing, and God has said no. We have parents in heaven right now over the past couple of years that he said no on. And my husband's still praying for healing, and we're praying that one day he's just saying not yet. But in the middle of those times of just desperately praying out to God, he can give you such unexpected blessings. And so I just encourage you, if you are here tonight, go for it. It might not be the healing that you are praying for, but our minds are not as good as God's mind, and he knows exactly what you need when you need it. So thank you for letting me share, and yeah.